Oh, it's Aslan. Trying to make it as quick as possible. You know what I'm going to say. Have an iPhone? Have an iPad? Use the podcast app to listen to the show? Please search for Wake Up Warchant on the podcast app. You'll see two results. They look absolutely identical. But the one on the right, tap on that one. You should see it's got like over 1,000 reviews. Be sure you're subscribed and downloaded to that one. If for some reason you're having trouble downloading that feed, don't worry about it. Don't sweat it. Just keep doing what you're doing. We don't want to create any headaches for anybody. But again, if you're on the podcast app, search for Wake Up Warchant. You'll see two results. Hit the one on the right. Hit the music. Let's go. Showtime.
From Tally to Cali,
It's time
to wake up.
wake up! Wake up! Warchant.com is your ultimate Seminole sports source.
and this is Wake Up Warchant, presented by Corner Pocket Bar and Grill
One ball, corner pocket.
Now here's Warchant.com's Aslan Hajavandi.
and Corey Clark.
Going too fast, I think I'm going to crash.
Wake up. What is up, everybody? It is Wake Up Warchant, presented by the Corner Pocket Bar and Grill, Tallahassee, Florida. Coming up on today's show, the defense, was it really their fault? The offense, they couldn't block it up. Is it just as simple as that? And this kicker, we got to talk about some things, as well as the Zaxby's Indescribably Good Player of the Week. Wake Up Warchant, part of the Warchant.com family. Won't you hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to us if you're listening to us on YouTube. And we are presented to you by the Corner Pocket Bar and Grill in Tallahassee, Florida. Monday's lunch special, build your own burger, top-of-the-line Angus beef and those patties they serve during Build Your Own Burger over at the Corner Pocket Bar and Grill, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., the lunch special today here on Monday. Tomorrow, trivia. Head on out there, get some tacos, Coronas, and live it up at the Corner Pocket Bar and Grill. We'll be back there next week, though, for the whole happy hour and the festivities as we get ready for Clemson. But in the meantime, treat yourself, right, Corey, at the Corner Pocket Bar and Grill.
Absolutely. Great place to be. Even after a loss, you can go there and watch. I got over there after the game on Saturday night, watched Georgia survive. It's a little troubling, that game. And then watched, the Clemson NC State game. And how about Georgia Tech upsetting Pitt?
Brent Key, let's go, big guy.
Yeah, man. The Corner Pocket's a great place to go. Also, you can go there on Sunday for all the DirecTV NFL games. It's just a good place to be, man. Just go. Quit being a baby and go to Corner Pocket.
Absolutely. Hopefully, you're one of the 12,000 folks who joined Warchant.com when we had that great special for $1. Although, apparently, it looks like I'm on the website right now. It looks like it's still there. I don't know. Did we extend it? I don't know. Maybe we did. Go to Warchant.com. Check it out. Subscribe if you haven't already. You're the reason they lost, everybody, because you didn't subscribe. Everybody else tried, but you let us down, people. Florida State falls to Wake Forest 31-21, first loss of the season, ACC loss, a divisional loss, so that kind of compounds things. But again, they kind of control their destiny. Go take care of business, repay the favor after a tough home loss, go on the road and take down an Atlantic foe just like Wake Forest did to you this coming weekend up in Raleigh. But lots to unpack from this game, Corey. I just, felt really good about where Florida State was on all cylinders on maybe offensive, defensive, maybe not as much special teams wise. We'll get to that later on. But the 31-21 loss, it seemed like that obviously 21 points would not be enough to beat Wake Forest. You'd probably feel pretty good maybe if you're told, I don't know, Thursday morning or Friday morning, hey, you're only going to hold Wake to 31. That's their season low. But ultimately, Florida State's defense, couldn't get off the field. Had several opportunities. I'm not even talking about in the second half when they need to get the ball back to the offense. They rose up a little bit there. But in the first half, so many opportunities to get off the field. Three guys converging on a receiver on the boundary and whiffing and letting them pick up a first down, just back-breaking sort of stuff. But they did everything they possibly could kind of throw out there, Corey, seems like. They brought blitzes from 15 yards off the ball with Jamie Robinson and the safeties. They brought pressure from the linebackers. They put Jared Verse in there under 100% to try to affect things, and it still wasn't enough, man. So I don't know how much burden Adam Fuller and his defense bear for this loss, but how do you kind of calculate it after the 31-21 aftermath?
Yeah, nobody that could watch that game would say the defense played well, but I wouldn't put the brunt of the loss on the defense because, look, man, you watch that offense. You watched how goofy it is and how hard it is to defend. When you have Fabian Lovett for 0 plays, you have Jared Verse, who's your best defensive player, along with Fabian Lovett. Those are your two best guys. You had them total for 21 plays. Jared Verse played 20 plays. I think he played 21 plays. Wake Forest ran 85 plays. So your best defensive player played 25% of the snaps. Your second best defensive player played 0% of the snaps. And they're both defensive linemen, and that is a tough offense to deal with when you just have kind of not great dudes on the defensive line. And look, Patrick Payton might be something. Joshua Farmer might be something. They might end up being very good college football players. They're redshirt freshmen. I think we know what Leonard Warner is now. Derek McClendon's a little bit banged up. You know, he got hurt in the at the end of the Boston College game. So you Robert Cooper, I don't know that he's 100%. I don't know that Jared Jackson's 100%. Malcolm Ray clearly isn't 100%. These guys, and I don't know that any of those guys were NFL guys anyway. And so when you have, you know, not a great defensive line and it's banged up, that is not a great recipe to play Wake Forest because they could run on you. I mean, I think they ran for like 170 yards, which was not good. Like Sam Hartman only threw for 240 or something.
Yeah.
That's not crazy. I mean, that's not you. If you'd have gone in the game and said, "Hey, Hartman's only going to throw for 240," be like, "Oh, they're going to win by 2 touchdowns." Well, not when you give up 170 yards on the ground. And the reason that is because you just don't have a very good defensive line right now. Jared Verse, that was a good sign that he played 21 snaps, and so you think this week coming up he'll play more than that. And then by Clemson, maybe he's 100%. He's playing every snap. But, yeah, man, Fabian Lovett not being out there is a big deal. He's your best interior lineman. It's not close. That said, I don't quite understand, and we talked to Adam Fuller later today, and we will ask him this. The second half, and I know Jared Verse played a bit more in the second half, but in the second half, it seem like they were just more aggressive. They were trying to beat blocks. They were rushing up the field. Their whole purpose was to either blow up the mesh or put pressure on Sam Hartman. That seemed like their goal. In the first half, if you watch that film, it just, to me, looks like as soon as the ball is snapped, all 4 defensive linemen just kind of stand there. And now, look, they have a good offensive line, so you don't know, okay, is Derek McClendon trying to get around this dude and just isn't? Or is his whole goal to stand there and not try to get to Sam Hartman? Because it just, like the second half, after that ridiculous first drive of the second half where they just let him go right down the field, after that, it really did seem like they just pinned their ears back and like, screw this, we're going to be aggressive, we're going to go try to get him. And I didn't see that at all in the first half. And but I don't know. I don't know if that's just they got off blocks better, or if they changed their mindset, they changed their approach, their strategy, whatever it was. But you can't look at the way the defense played. And yeah, man, they gave up 10 points in the second half. They gave up, they had 2 straight stops when you really needed it, maybe 3 straight stops when you really needed it. But man, you've cut it to a 1-score game. There's 9.5 minutes to go at home, and they go 18 plays. Not good, man. That's not how you win football games. You have to get off the field. I know Sam Hartman is a good player. I know Wake Forest is a good offense. There's no shame in losing to that team in that offense. There's a little bit of shame in giving up an 18-play drive to ice the game at home. The crowd, God bless Florida State fans, man, and all you that came to that game. That was a great crowd for what went on in this state this week. That was an exceptional crowd, a non-Vanderbilt crowd, I would say. And they tried to get into it as much as they possibly could, but the third down defense was abysmal. And then when you have a stop, it's 3rd and 6 at Wake's 35, 40-yard line. Greedy Vance is right there. You force Hartman into a horrible throw. That ball's got to be intercepted, at least knocked down. And instead, Greedy Vance misses the ball completely, gets mossed, and not only do they not intercept the pass, they give up a first down, and then by the time they get the ball back, the game's over. So, no, I mean, look, we'll get into the offense too. The defense is not absolved of anything only because it gave up 31 points. Because, look, Wake didn't care if they scored a touchdown on that last drive. They didn't even try to score a touchdown. So that's 30. I mean, they would have been smart. They were smart not to try to score a touchdown. So, 35 points, that's not great at home, man. That's not great at home, even when you're missing 2 of your guys. Just because I so hated that first drive of the second half. And the fact that when the offense wasn't doing well, the defense didn't pick them up at all. The defense didn't pick them up at all. They just like, okay, you want to go score? We'll go score. There's another score. There's another score. They let them score essentially 3. Well, they did let them score 3 straight touchdowns on 3 straight drives. And the next one, it wasn't a score just because Jared Verse came in and got a sack. And then they missed a field goal.
Right.
But they were really in position to score 4 straight possessions, and that just shouldn't happen at home. I know Sam Hartman's good. He's not Dan Marino, and I just thought the defense did not play well, and we'll get to the offense. But, yeah, what's interesting about it, though, is like, to me, it's a one-off. Not only do you hope you get healthier, but you're not facing a goofy offense like that again anymore. NC State runs a traditional offense. So does Clemson. And also Wake has a very good offense. So it's not like you can make hard and fast judgments about who Adam Fuller is or what this defense is based on the Wake Forest game, because Wake scores a ton of points on everyone. Clemson's got a very good defense. Wake put up 45 on them. So it's almost like it's a one-off, and let's reserve judgment on what this defense is or isn't until the next 2 weeks. Because Wake is just going to do this to everyone, and it's such a weird, abnormal offense. It's hard to judge what your defense is based on what they do against Wake Forest.
I think one of the problems, though, Corey, that people feel about the defense, and I don't want to be like the Adam Fuller apologist, and I don't think I'm going to be kind of critical here, is the fact that, like, how are you not winning one-on-ones? But actually, maybe that doesn't fall on Fuller. That falls on your players there. But, like, nobody was getting home in the first half. Maybe that was them being tentative, to your point. Maybe they finally said, screw it, we're just going to go for broke in the second half, and it worked out quite well. But, I mean, they ran zone blitzes. They showed blitz. They dropped guys from the line when they were bluffing. They played man. I mean, they put guys on islands. And, I mean, the second touchdown, that catch was ridiculous on Renardo Green. I mean, Renardo was on the guy's hip the entire time. I think the third touchdown, or maybe that was the second one. Marion just is being asked to cover a guy for 6 seconds. That's just not going to happen, man. That's really a sort of difficult ask. They just looked kind of overwhelmed, and maybe that goes to the fact that this is just a really kind of tough scheme to go up against. But you would just hope that you've got some physical prowess that you can beat a block, man. You can get to the quarterback and affect things a little bit more. You can break these passes up, but then Clemson didn't. So maybe that's what we kind of have to compare it to. Is like, look what Clemson did, look what this defense did. Didn't look pretty, but again, maybe it's just so credit to Wake Forest, I guess. But that people don't want to hear that. But maybe now 2 days removed, they're a little bit more receptive to that kind of message.
I mean, and Wake's a good team, man. There's no shame in losing to that team. There's no shame in giving up points to it. And yeah, man, I thought if Florida State was going to get beat, their corners would get torched.
Yeah.
And I don't really know that happened. Yeah, they gave up some touchdowns, but everybody does. But Wake didn't take many deep shots at all. They didn't throw a lot of one-on-one lobs. They kind of methodically went down the field, and a lot of it was the run defense. They kept getting 7 yards on every first down run, it seemed like. And so 2nd and 3, you're not getting a stop against Wake Forest when it's 2nd and 3, not with that goofy offense. So because that mesh point, you can ride it for 5 yards for a first down. So I don't necessarily think the corners were an issue. I think the cornerback position might be an issue moving forward because clearly Duke Cooper isn't Duke Cooper. And I'm not saying that because he gave up a touchdown, because everybody gives up a touchdown. No, he didn't play well in that particular play, but he barely played in the second half. I haven't looked at the PFF numbers that closely to see how many plays he ran. But
that's what I'm here for, Corey.
There you go. You do that while I talk.
43.
How many?
43 out of 89 is what they had on PFF. They had 89 snaps defensively played for Florida State, and they had Omarion had 43. He graded out at 50.8 overall. That was the lowest of a starter.
Yeah, not great. And how many did Azareye'h Thomas have? How many did Greedy Vance have? Jarian Jones.
Azareye'h had 33. Jarian had 41. Who was the other one you asked me about?
Greedy Vance.
Greedy had 8.
And what about Renardo Green?
61.
So Renardo is the guy you count on the most.
Both those guys graded below Omarion as well. So
yeah, I mean, look, man, you're not going to grade. I mean, they gave up some plays, man. That happens. Wake is going to do that. But the fact that Azareye'h Thomas is playing that much and Jarian Jones is playing that much would clearly lead you to believe that Omarion Cooper just isn't the guy. And that's a bummer, because if he was the guy we thought he was, or if he was healthy, we don't know what's going on necessarily there. I can say he practices all the time, but if he was the guy we thought he was, the guy he was at the end of last year in the spring, that is a huge difference maker, and he's clearly not that. So now they're having to go to other options because Marion Cooper just isn't the dude we thought he was. That said, I don't think the corners were the problem. I mean, I just don't. They weren't good. It's not like they dominated. Let's be honest. But the reason you lost the game was the defensive line.
Yeah.
And on defense, the reason you lost the game was the defensive line, the front seven, the run defense, however you want to phrase it. That's why you lost the game. Wake Forest running for 175 yards in your building is troubling. And I don't know if it's just that Malcolm Ray and Jarrett Jackson aren't very good, or are they too banged up to be good? But when we looked at this defense before the season, the one aspect of it that you and I both, I think, were hesitant on was the depth of the defensive line.
Interior especially.
Well, really both though, right? When you look at it, when you lose Jared Verse, that's a big drop. If Florida State was completely healthy up front, and I mean not only the guys that aren't playing, but the guys that are playing that are banged up, if they were completely healthy, I do think they're one of the best defensive lines in the conference. I think they win this game on Saturday, but they aren't. Yeah. And the guys they have to try to replace just aren't Fabian Lovett. They have, two dudes on. Well, Jamie Robinson had a nice game. I think he had 13 or 14 tackles. He looked more like himself in this game. He's had a couple nice weeks in a row. But really, you would say, especially in the front seven, they have two dudes. It's Fabian Lovett and Jared Verse. And you got 20 out of 178 possible snaps they could have played. They played 21 snaps. That's the other guys that are playing those reps aren't dudes. They're average. They might be good eventually, but they're not great college football players. I think Fabian Lovett and Jared Verse are great college football players. When you don't have them, that's a huge loss. And they just don't. The disparity between those two guys and their backups is enormous. And I think that was on display Saturday. I know that was on display Saturday. They just don't have the depth on the defensive line to withstand losses like that. But hey, one of these days they might, buddy. They might recruit to a point where it won't matter if you lose your two best defensive linemen. You got guys right. You got horses right behind it that could come in and play.
Yeah, just a couple other things on defense before we transition to the offense. Second drive from Wake, they got 3rd and 12. Florida State drops 8 guys in the coverage on this play, so they end up rushing Josh Farmer, Jarrett Jackson, and DJ Lundy, and then
think about that. And look, man,
and they drop Leonard Warner and Briggs, and they're only 5 yards deep though in the zone on a 3rd and 12, which is
doesn't make sense. And then then they weren't lit up in the middle of the field. They were lit up on the sideline. Like I think it's Renardo Green. What is he doing there to let a guy run a 17-yard comeback on 3rd and 12? Like, there's got to be some situational awareness. I asked this question after the game, and we didn't get a great answer. Maybe we'll get a better answer later on today. Why isn't Jared Verse in there on 3rd and 12? Like, if he was able to play, why was he not playing at all in the first half until very late? Was it when you saw the game was getting away from you decided to play him? Because on those particular plays, it just doesn't make sense that your best pass rusher isn't in the game because he is a disruptive force. And so when he doesn't play on that position, on that particular play, when it's 3rd and 12, in that instance where you're trying to get control of the game, to me that meant Jared Verse isn't available today, because clearly if Jared Verse was available today, he would be on the field on 3rd and 12, and he wasn't multiple times. And that is a little confusing. I get that he had limitations. He had a snap count probably, but I just think 3rd in that situation is the exact time that Jared Verse is on the field, and he wasn't. And I also don't think he was on the field. I could be wrong. I should probably go look this up. One of the pivotal plays on that 18-play marathon drive that is still going on was the 3rd and 10. When Wake had a 3rd and 10 at like midfield, and they ran a draw and got 7 yards. And then they went for it on 4th and 3 from like the 36, and they got a first down on like a 6-yard pass to the tight end. I don't think Jared Verse was on the field for either one of those plays. To me, but he came in later. He was on the field when they had 1st and goal at the 3. Well, that's not nearly as important as 3rd and 10 from the 45. Because 1st and 10 at when Wake got first and goal. The game was over. The game was very, very much in doubt. 3rd and 10 at the 46-yard line.
43
And it makes no sense to me. And I just want to know the machinations of who decides when Jared Verse goes in the game. If he was tired and asked out, I get it. But you better not have, say, you know what, I want Leonard Warner and Patrick Payton in the game right here, or Dennis Briggs in the game instead of Jared Verse. That's the play of the game. And you don't have your best defensive player on the field, even though he is available to play. That's just, So a little confusing. But again, this is what we do after losses, right? Everything is magnified. Every little play, every little question, every decision is questioned. That's just how life works when you lose a game.
Yeah, and just 2 other plays defensively. First half, just the last touchdown drive that Wake had. I mean, there's this play here on 1st and 10 where Malcolm Ray snatches the guy in front of him and just totally whips the guy. Problem is, though, I don't know if he either trips himself or he trips over the left tackle who's dropping back in a pass pro set. But like that single moment right there, Malcolm Ray whips his guy, does his job, but he still trips. At that point, Hartman only had one read, and it would have been to throw underneath to their receiver, what was number 80. It would have been a little bit short of the chains on first down, whatever. But instead, he's got more time, so he looks downfield, and that's the one that DJ Lundy's in coverage by himself with his back to the line of scrimmage and has to tackle the guy. And that gives them 15 free easy yards on the way to their last touchdown drive of that first half. And then later in that one, when they change fields, that's the long touchdown that Omar and Cooper's put on that crazy situation of having to cover the guy for 6 seconds because DJ Lundy is like hesitant on the blitz. And that goes back, I guess, to the hesitancy aspect of this, where I think they were hedging against everything. It was like, all right, we cannot play totally aggressive because we have to guard against this, and the other. Maybe if that situation happens in the second half where they figured out what they want to do, probably just a little bit too late, but that obviously a little bit of hesitation there cost them majorly in that situation there. So the defense, though, again, to Corey's point, won't have to face that kind of offense. So that's good. Hopefully they can whip up on NC State's offense.
It's funny,
like Clemson did.
I would love to know how many people listening to this were at the game and had never seen this kind of offense before. Because, look, Stephanie was there. She is not a huge football fan, but she watches it. She's a Florida State fan. She's a Cleveland Browns fan. Sorry. The Falcons got them. Falcons got them on Sunday, baby. Rise up. But she watched that offense and, like, what is this? She's like, they were dancing. They were literally dancing and having conversations, walking towards the line of scrimmage. And I'm like, yeah, I know. It's what they do. It's ridiculous. She's like, how are they doing that? How are they not holding? And I'm like, well, I don't know. They probably are holding, but it's Wake Forest, and they coach it well. They block it well. They're all upperclassmen, and they get away with it. But it is the goofiest thing I've ever seen. Like, I didn't realize, and I said this on the Warchant rap afterwards with Ira, I didn't realize that Hartman would then pat the running back on the back, like, go. Yeah. Like, he would, to like tell him, I'm handing you the ball. Because they will literally sit there and look at things for 2 seconds. It is just absolutely goofy. And there are times, there was certainly a crossing route, like a square in they ran on one of those plays where you're like, well, what is Kevin Noles supposed to do, man? What are these linebackers supposed to do? You can't stand there for 5 seconds with the ball in the gut of a running back and then pull it out. I mean, there's only so much you can do. And when you don't have a great defensive line to disrupt that, you were in trouble. That said, even though they got down 28-7, man, and even though I thought that first drive of the second half was the least competitive drive I've ever seen, or one of the least competitive drives I've ever seen from a Norvell team, that first drive of the second half for the defense where Wake just was like, went right down the field and like, we're taking control of this game. Y'all don't care. Y'all aren't going to fight. Y'all aren't going to be physical. We're going to take control of this game. And they did. It went right down the field. I don't even think they got a third down on that drive. They just went right down the field. Even though it looked like that, it was 28-7. Wake was completely in control. You were completely out of sorts. You made it a one-score game, and if Greedy Vance makes that play, you might win the darn game. So kudos for that. It's just it's frustrating that there was that, I don't know, man, hour and a half stretch of real time where Florida State was just completely out of sorts and Wake Forest dominated the game. You gave up 28 straight points. You can't do that at home. You just can't do that at home, expect to win a game, and you did. You gave up 28 straight points from the early part of the first quarter till the early part of the third quarter.
Time for the Noles to rally. Time for myself to rally. Corey, not as much. He only offered up one in the parlay. We'll try to do better this week. But you folks know football. Maybe you should give us your winners so we can pick winners, because you guys pick winners all the time. You should get paid for it. Do that by going to mybookie.ag, where you can bet single game spreads, money lines, or you can parlay multiple of these props together, if you will, to increase your payouts. There's also low contest entry fees and over $500,000 to be won. It all makes it so you don't have to be a pro gambler to have fun. It's easy to get started. Just go to mybookie.ag, use the promo code WARCHANT, and your first deposit will be matched dollar for dollar all the way up to $1,000. That's right. You can secure a double deposit bonus. Right now, Corey, Florida State, 3.5-point dog against the Wolfpack. That game will be, was that 7? Is it 8 o'clock game, right?
8 o'clock.
ACC.
8 o'clock.
Bummer I won't be able to be there with you and Ira. Hurts a little bit. And 52 is the over-under. Not going to tell you what to do on that game. Just, I don't know anymore. I'm in a glass case of emotion. I'll have to watch practice on Monday or Tuesday and Wednesday and figure out what I'm going to do. A&M 24-point dog against Bama. That'll be fun, Jimbo. Have fun with that one. Revenge. It's going to hurt. Well, it doesn't hurt, though, using MyBookie. It's not your dad's sports book. It's your book. It's MyBookie. MyBookie.ag. Use that promo code WARCHANT. What makes this show beautiful, Corey, at least in my humble opinion, is that I guess people would maybe say you're nuanced. I think you're just extremely thorough, maybe a little too thorough sometimes.
Okay.
I probably oversimplify things. Offensively, 21 points, not going to get it done.
Nope.
In most cases in this day and age.
Against Wake Forest, it will never get it done.
Yeah. So, that said, the offense, also the turnover in the first half helps create some of that momentum that Wake Forest seized and put your defense in a bad situation. Yeah. So that obviously didn't help. Jordan Travis took a lot of ownership of that after the game. But going back and looking at that game and even seeing it live, does it come down to something as simple? I don't want to oversimplify it, but this offense, for as great as it looked the 4 previous games, does it really just come down to the fact that if they cannot block, and they could not block well at all, that this offense is just going to look up and down, uneven, much as it had in the previous, 20 games of Mike Norvell's career previously here?
Well, I mean, yeah, that's a huge – that's the biggest part of an offense is being able to keep the defensive linemen off your running backs and off your quarterback. They did not do that well at all. And what was bizarre about – not bizarre, but what was odd about it, I guess that's the same word as bizarre. I just used a different one, gang, is that to me, it wasn't like they were just getting whipped physically by the guys in front of them. I thought they were confused. I thought they let guys run free. I thought there were times. So on the Jordan Travis fumble, if you watch it, Jordan Travis rolls to it, like takes a step to his right initially, and then rolls back to his left, as if it almost looked like a broken play. And maybe it was. I don't know. It kind of looked like a broken play. But there were linemen pulling to the left. And if you watch that Wake Forest linebacker, even though Jordan Travis rolls to the right initially, he sees those linemen and just burns upfield to the left, back where Jordan Travis ends up going. And I think he might have been the one that caused the fumble. But he goes up there like he's scouted this offense better than anybody could have scouted the offense. Like he has Dillingham on his speed dial. Like he knew what was coming. It was nuts. And it's like, okay, so it wasn't just, okay, we can't block their ends and we can't block their tackles. Now, there was some of that too, but a lot of it was just like, it didn't look like, because they would sometimes only have a 3-man front. Sometimes they would always bring a linebacker. They'd bring somebody extra. It just didn't look like the offensive line was communicating well and knew who to block. Not that they couldn't block them. They didn't know who to block at all times. And sometimes it was just a case of them being whipped. And Wake Forest is not a good defensive line. They're not terrible, but they're not good. They're certainly not what you're going to go up against the next 2 weeks. And that's what could be concerning for a Florida State fan. It's like, look, we know this offensive line isn't great. I don't know that any of these guys are going to play in the league, but they were playing good enough for this offense to perform at a high level. And then on Saturday, they wrecked everything. They just got wrecked. I know Florida State ended up with 400 yards of offense, but that offensive line got kind of obliterated for a good portion of that game, especially when the game was really on the line. And that's concerning when you move forward. But, look, when's Robert Scott dressed out in that game, which he didn't play, but the fact that he dressed out would lead you to believe that, okay, he must be getting kind of close. Mm-hmm. Well, if Robert Scott can get back to playing, well, that makes the offensive line better. Now Darius Washington can be more of a swing guy, and he doesn't have to be your flipping left tackle. And that makes you better because Robert Scott is better than Darius Washington. Now, is he going to be a difference maker enough to the point where you're going to dominate NC State and Clemson's fronts? Clearly not. But it makes your offensive line better because, look, they were good enough. Clearly they were good enough for Boston College. Wake Forest isn't Boston College, and I just thought that offensive line wasn't very good.
I thought they were taking on an easier defense. That's a little bit of the weird part of it, I think.
Yeah, I agreed. And they just Wake Forest isn't a good defense, and so when you look at the reasons you lose this game, and it's twofold. It's the defense and the offense, and we'll get into the kicker in a bit. I think the biggest reason, like you said, is the offense. If you'd have told me before the game Florida State's going to score 21 points on Wake Forest, I would have said, well, they're going to lose. Guess what?
Yeah.
They lost. Now, if you'd have told me that Florida State's going to hold Wake Forest to 31 points, I'd have said, you know what? I think there's a pretty good chance they win that game. Well, they didn't because the offense was bad. And it was really bad really for the whole first half except for one drive. It was just bad. It hadn't looked like that all year. It looked like the 2021 version and parts of 2020. Just no continuity, no rhythm. The penalties were ridiculous. Travis, look, he was great. He had some really good moments. He's been great all year. I thought for 3 or 4 drives there he looked skittish, but it's easy to look skittish when you don't trust your offensive line to be able to block or to know who to block. And there were guys running free, and you had no running game. It was a lot. It was a lot of reasons that the offense didn't look good. But it's okay to like look at a game like that and understand that the offense did not play well because it didn't, and then also, be able to rationalize that, hey man, this happens in sports. Like you're not always going to be good. Sometimes your left tackle's going to have a bad day. Sometimes your quarterback's going to be just a little bit off. Sometimes he's going to fumble. Look around the country, and I tweeted about it after the game. I think Florida State is what now, Aslan? I think they're 28th in the country. Oh. If you look at the teams receiving votes, I think they're 28th. So they dropped like 5 spots after losing. You know why that is? Because everybody lost. Like literally 8. So from number 16 teams,
you're starting to sound like lost a decade Bobby Bowden. Like
yeah, right. Hey, half the teams win, half the teams lose. Yeah. But the point is, there's so like from team number 16 in the country to team number 25 in the country, that's 10 teams. 8 of them lost on Saturday. Yeah. Like, so it's just what college football is now. If Florida State had played well on Saturday, they would have won. But they didn't, and they lost. But that does not mean they're guaranteed to lose this weekend. I think if Florida State, I don't feel any differently about the game at NC State than I did before the Wake Forest game. I just think college football is like the NFL, man. You're going to be in a game in the fourth quarter, almost certainly. And it's just a matter of Greedy Vance catching a ball. It's just a matter of Darius Washington not holding right there, or maybe the ref not pulling the flag out of his pocket. Those kind of plays, when you're evenly matched, those are the plays that win or lose games. And Florida State, they made a couple of plays at the end against LSU and Louisville that they didn't make against Wake Forest. And that's life when you're not a great college football team, but a pretty good one. And that's like, look, Wake Forest just lost. It was just coming off a heartbreaking loss where they just didn't make one extra play in the game. NC State, they had chances in that game. They didn't make the 1 or 2 plays when it really mattered on defense to keep that game a game. Against Clemson, I'm talking about. Florida State against Wake Forest. Like, what's bizarre is that, man, I'm of the opinion that the 5 best teams in the ACC are in the Atlantic. Like, because I'm going to throw Syracuse in there.
Oh, all right.
I think
Garrett Schrader fan. All right.
Clemson, NC State, Wake Forest, Florida State, and Syracuse might just be the 5 best teams in the ACC.
We're like the SEC West of the ACC, right? That's where all this.
It's a meat grinder, son.
Yeah, man.
ACC Atlantic is a meat grinder. Woo. I think NC State's a very good team, or could be a very good team.
No, they
I'm
are.
not.
That's
I'm
a
not.
tough
I'm
out.
not quite sold on that offense.
That offensive line is not good. Yeah.
No, but what you wonder about is Florida State's defensive line is not good right now.
Exactly.
And will they be able to stop the run? And if you could stop the run, you can beat anyone. Florida State could not stop the run on Saturday. But anyway, the point being, man, college football, it really is. There is a lot of parity in this thing, and Florida State did not play well in that game. And it's disappointing because I just think it's disappointing because you felt like if you had played well, you would have won. You would have won, and maybe comfortably. If the offense had played like the offense is capable of playing, you probably win that game by 2 scores. But you didn't. But that doesn't mean you still can't go and do some things this year. And that doesn't mean you can't go win this game on Saturday. And if you lose on Saturday, it certainly doesn't mean you can't go beat Clemson. Like every game is its own entity. And Florida State, I think, is good enough to beat, and nothing changed. I think Florida State is good enough to beat everybody left on its schedule. I also think
they can lose
aside
to
from
everybody
maybe
on their
2 games,
schedule.
they can lose to everybody on their
There's our-
schedule.
Put down the Clarkisms thread, everybody, on the warchant.com.
But
Try
don't
to
you think,
counsel.
like, I would have said Georgia Tech they couldn't lose to, no chance, until I saw what Georgia Tech did at Pittsburgh. And then I'm like, well, crap, man, maybe Georgia Tech can beat anyone too now.
Right.
I mean, that was crazy. They held Pitt to 7 points at home. So yeah, I think that Florida State. My opinion of this team isn't any different at all, really.
Yeah,
you know,
the only thing. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say the offense was just the offense was problematic and frustrating. It just didn't play well, but that happens.
Yeah.
Now, if they don't play well again the next 2 weeks, and they're much better defenses, but if they're getting obliterated up front, well, then you have to change what you think of the ceiling of this team.
Yeah, that's the problem.
That's what's not great.
Because I'll disagree with you a little bit when you talked about it. Looked like they were confused up front. I think they were fine. They knew what they had to. They knew their responsibilities. They just physically were incapable of performing it. That was a concerning thing. So much of their run game, and I only really went back and watched the first 2.5 quarters of the game. But obviously the first half really kind of set things in motion. But man, so much of their run game, their interior power run game, is like counter-based. It's all pulling guards. And they'd pull guards, and the tackle is supposed to come in there and fill that vacancy. And I texted you and Ira about one of the plays. But, Dylan Gibbons pulls, and then Darius Washington needs to fill on the back end of what Dylan has just left behind because Dylan's pulling, and he can't get there in time. They made Justin Turntine. That number 0, Kobe Turner, whomever, man, that guy is quick. They'd have Dimitri Emanuel pulling, so then basically Justin Turntine has to move laterally as fast as humanly possible to just get in his way so he doesn't blow things up, and he just couldn't. So we can talk about Robert Scott coming back, which would be a
isn't
big
that
help.
more? I just want to interrupt real quick.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
not like you just can't block a guy. You have to know what your linemen are capable of doing. And if Turntine isn't capable of getting to that spot, don't call that play. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, God, he just can't block this defensive end. This defensive end is just crushing him.
Yeah.
It's not that necessarily. Now, we might face that later on this month. But for this one, it's just, okay, well, if Turntine isn't fast enough to get there, know your personnel a little better.
Well, it happened like first half, and I saw some of it happen in the second half. And then you start doing the whole dangerous transitive property thing, or you're watching NC State and Clemson. You're like, well, their defensive line is probably going to be
A little better than Wake's.
Yeah, so then that's where you kind of. But I'm not. I'm still got the tickets for Phoenix, but I've got the refundable clause in there. Everybody,
Nice.
So I haven't totally emptied everything out, but that's probably what's changed my mind. I still think Jordan again. Man, if Jordan has time, which he did in the second half, man, those back-to-back drives they had, he found some rhythm because he had some time, and then unfortunately, man, he also had. He was making things happen on that drive where Micah Pittman set them up with a really nice punt return.
Yeah.
And then made that great throw to Pokey, who had a really good catch and run. But that was.
I thought that was the best, almost the best Jordan Travis play of the game.
Yeah.
Was the throw to Pokey that got him down to the 4, like the rolling out, sprinting out to his left, and then seeing Pokey. But then they got called for the hold.
Yeah.
Like they had 1st and goal at the 4. Instead, they ended up with 4th and 30 at the 40. Like they ended up with a 4th and 31 when they had 1st and goal at the 4. Now they ended up cutting it to a 1-score game again. But like if that hold isn't called, or if Darius Washington doesn't hold there, because he did hold, but we saw some holds that weren't called. That was a hold, but you didn't have to call it, referee. But either way, if you go score there, you might win the game, and you're
I
probably
think
going to
you
score
do.
there if you're
Yeah.
first and goal at the 4.
Absolutely.
Probably,
No,
right?
That was the game. I mean, this was a team loss. We've
Yes,
talked about the
correct.
defense. We've talked
Yep.
about the offense. We're about to get to special teams here. This was a team loss, but that one singular play right there, you had it. Like that, they've seized the moment in every game they've played in so far. That opening kickoff against Boston College let BC know it was going to be a long night. Obviously, the blocked extra point against LSU. Louisville, Johnny Wilson making great catches. Tate Rodemaker stepping up. Kevin Noles making that great interception. Like in those key moments, this team has stepped up. Everything that went wrong. I mean, you can say Greedy Vance can knock down that pass. Like if that play stands, I mean, I feel extremely confident at that point. Wake is on their heels and they're totally panicked, and because they even that drive, it's hard to criticize an 18-play drive, but man, they were I think second guessing themselves on what they were trying to do there, where they wanted to get a touchdown, or where they just wanted to burn as much clock as they possibly could. So they were panicking a little bit too, and they didn't have as much stress on them because of that previous possession. So, bit of a bummer.
The clutch shot, the biggest hit. It's time for the Zaxby's Indescribably Good.
Player of the week.
The man has spoken. It's time for the Zaxby's Indescribably Good Player of the Week. It's always tough on a loss, but we're seasoned for this. We've only, usually do these after L's, unfortunately. But things have changed this season. It's been great. I was going to shout out the women's soccer team, but it was like 3 people involved in the game-winning goal, which ended up being a penalty kick. But shout out to them. 8th straight win over Miami on the pitch. I'm going to pick Johnny Wilson. Came in late on Johnny, but I'm all in on Johnny. 6 catches, 85 yards, and a touchdown. Man, just including some hard running. I mean, he's not just a 50-50 jump ball Greg Carr clone. Shout out Greg Carr, stand-up Citra, North Marion. But just seeing him, the yards after catch that he's doing, this was nice to see him and Jordan have some rapport because most of his damage obviously came in the Louisville game with Tate back there. Hopefully at least there was some sort of connection developed there as he had the most catches on the evening for Florida State. 6, 85 yards and a touchdown. We need some more of that. He can't throw the ball to himself, but let's get him involved a little bit more in Raleigh. Johnny's my pick.
Yeah, I like the idea of inside the 5, maybe just tossing it up to your 6-7 guy. That worked out there in the fourth quarter of that game. And I'm gonna stay in the receiving core. I thought by far Micah Pittman had his best game as a Seminole. That was his best game as a college athlete, period. It wasn't just the 2 touchdowns. He had some big first down catches. And then that punt return, man, was a thing of beauty. He catches it like with a dude in his face and does not fair catch it. And then I think he ends up getting like 35 to 40 yards. That's just a remarkable play.
Hurdles
from
a dude. It was beautiful.
Yeah, man. And from a fearless kid, when the game was on the line, it set him up to maybe cut it to a 1-score game. And then the aforementioned hold happened from Darius Washington. But, man, Micah Pittman, those are contested catches he's making. He's a difference maker. He is a good football player, man. That was a nice job in the portal. They did a really good job in the portal with those wide receivers.
Shout out Calabasas, home of Micah and Johnny. Our picks for the Zaxby's Indescribably Good Players of the Week. All right, the kicker. Let's get to it then. Ryan Fitzgerald missed his kick, 29 yards.
Kicks.
2 kicks, yeah. The 55-yard was close, though. Had enough leg. Good for him. At some point there in the second half, you also decided he's not even trustworthy enough to kick an extra point, which is interesting, but it didn't end up costing them because they got it on the next time around. I mean, he makes that kick. It's the butterfly effect or thing, whatever. So it's hard to say how much everything else changed in the game, but, Wake Forest probably doesn't have as much breathing room when it comes to getting an additional insurance score late in the game. How much of an issue is this now, Corey? I mean, I don't know if it cost you the game. It contributed. It's you were able to navigate games without it costing you a result. It now is factored into a loss. So do you have to take this a little bit more seriously? That's a bad way to put it. Do you have to maybe – this has to be an open kicking competition now at this point? I mean, something has to change. What does change? Will it change?
Yeah, I mean, sure. You can, and I'm sorry, I don't know the backup kicker's name off the top of my head.
Aiden Shariari.
There you go. What's his number?
97 or
97,
something?
right? Yeah. I knew the number, but not the name. Look, man, sure. Go ahead, have an open kicking tryout, maybe, but you're not going to know. Are you really going to put that kid his first college kick is going to be in Raleigh.
Why wasn't his first college kick an extra point against Wake Forest? That's what I don't.
Not a bad question, and not an unfair question, especially after the missed 29-yard field goal. But moreover, whether it's Fitzgerald or him, you're probably not going to trust either one of them a lot, right?
Yeah.
So it changes the complexion of the season. Like imagine, I was talking to some buddies on Sunday about this. You have 4th and 8 at the NC State 20-yard line, Aslan. What are you doing Saturday night?
4th and 8 from the 22-yard line?
Yes.
I mean, 8's a lot, man, but I guess you have to go for it.
So it's a 39 or 40-yard field goal with this crew.
Yeah. You're a golfer and you don't have a pitching wedge. Like you don't even you've got a driver, a 3-iron, a 5-iron, and that's about it. Like you don't have anything for a short game right now.
So it completely changes how you coach. Yeah. And I asked Norvell about it afterwards. I'm not trying to kill Fitzgerald, man. Nobody feels worse about it than he does. He's trying. He's not trying to miss. But as it is right now, you have a field goal. Norvell can say all he wants about he believes in Ryan Fitzgerald. That's fine. He clearly doesn't trust him because why would he at this point? There's no trust that it's been earned. He can believe that he's going to turn it around, whatever. But 4th and 6, 4th and 8, 4th and 12 from the 28-yard line, I think all of those now are you have to go for it.
It's wild, man.
That's not the way to live life.
It's not.
But that's where you are because you just don't have a kicker. You don't have a kicker. Now, maybe somehow he comes around. And I think, so many people were angry in the moment about that 55-yard attempt. Well, by the way, the thing you should be angry about is why are you going to delay a game there? Know what you're going to do before you do it. You can't. Maybe he makes it from 50. I don't know. But at that instance, it's going to take a miracle anyway. So why not give this kid one last shot? It's a 50-yarder, 55-yarder. If he makes it, maybe it turns his career around. Mm-hmm. And if he doesn't, well, you're not winning the game anyway unless you recover an onside kick, which, the odds of that are low. So I didn't mind in that moment, 4th and 20. I think it was 4th and 20. It was 4th and forever, kicking a field goal there. I really didn't.
No, I was with you. Like you said in the press box, this has to probably be the least amount of pressure he's had in a kicking column.
Yeah, there was no pressure there, and he still missed it. Now, it was a 55-yard, it was a huge kick. I mean, it was a big kick, but he missed it it was a big distance kick. So now you're at a place where, it certainly seems like he doesn't even trust him on extra points, perhaps. You're right. I would say when you cut it to 28-13, maybe have the walk-on kick an extra point. And then maybe you feel different about things. If he gets a couple extra points, maybe then you go into next week, it's open kicking competition. Maybe that kid makes a couple kicks in Raleigh. But the reality is you've got to coach completely differently now because once you get inside the 30-yard line, it's still 4-down territory. Up until what, man? The 5? The 7?
Well, no, I don't know. Extra points on the 2, buddy. They don't even want to kick extra points.
I don't know where you feel comfortable after your kicker misses a 29-yard field goal. I don't know where you feel comfortable getting to where it's not always 4-down territory. And so look, and with that in mind, it changes the way you call 2nd and 3rd down if you know you're always going to go for it on 4th down. But that said, I wasn't in love with some of the play calls he had on 2nd and 3rd down. There were a lot of runs on 2nd and 3rd down that just kind of defied belief.
Especially in the second quarter, talking about before halftime too, right? Primarily.
Yeah, but also when they got down after the Darius Washington hold, they had a 2nd and 20 and they run the ball.
Well, they took a shot and man, Jordan
to Toafili and just missed them. Yeah.
So that they kind of went for broke on.
But the next play, don't run the ball.
Yeah.
You're not running it well. It wasn't a QB draw. It wasn't something to take advantage of them rushing upfield because they think you're going to throw. It was just it seemed like just a simple handoff.
Yeah.
And it didn't get anything. And I know that's easy to say in hindsight, but don't run the ball on 2nd and 20, man. Like there were plenty of times where I just thought they ran it it didn't make sense the way they ran it. But I also don't know if that's Jordan doing that, if that's an RPO and he's choosing the R. We don't know, about every one of those calls if they were just straight handoffs. But either way, the point remains: you get inside the NC State 25-yard line next week, you're not guaranteed a points. You're not guaranteed of even attempting a field goal. And so that's that's what is that I think is one of the biggest takeaways from the first 5 games of the season is you don't have a kicker and you have to change the way you coach. And he did. He started going for 2 on touchdowns. The only reason at all he attempted a field goal of 50 or 55 yards is because it was 4th and forever. I think if it's 4th and 7, I think if it's 4th and 9, he's going for it. I think from here on out, on the other side of, if he's inside a team's 35-yard line and it's 4th and 6 or less, maybe 4th and 10 or less, he's going to go for almost all of them. And that's when you're going to play a lot of close games. That's not, like I said, that's just not a way to live life, man. I mean, I like it in a way that, like, okay, it should free you up, that you know you got 4 downs here. There's not so much pressure on 3rd down because you know you got 2 downs here. That might even free up your players to play a little more loose, knowing that, okay, it's just 3rd down. You know, it's not 4th. It's 3rd down.
It's not cash down anymore.
It's not cash down. They're both cash downs at this point. But man, it's just you know. I'll be honest. I went to corner pocket after the game on Saturday night. The thing that was brought up to me the most was the kicker, and it wasn't close. The kicker. What are we going to do about the kicker? We don't have a kicker. How does he run him out there for a 50? All these things. That is a real problem right now because you don't have a kicker. And what I mean by that, you certainly have a kicker. He's on scholarship. Syracuse remembers him. He's made some kicks, but when the game on the line, not even with the game on the line, 21-7 with 10 seconds left in the second quarter from 30 yards out, he's missing. So it completely, what you thought you had going into this season is gone. Like you have to change again. You just have to change the way you coach. You can't just say, okay, we can get 3 right here, we'll be good. I would have thought the Louisville game would have told him that. It did not. He did make the one kick against Boston College. He snuck that bad boy in there, but he did make it, and then he missed an extra point later on. And then this game, it was just awful. So, although, hey, kudos to kicking the ball through the end zone. He's still doing a good job on kickoffs. But, again, I talked about it after the Louisville game is you got to coach to your team. And nobody watching that game thought that Ryan Fitzgerald was going to make that kick against Louisville. Nobody. And I'm talking about the one in the fourth quarter that would put him up 7. So you can't play for that. And then I know it was 4th and 12 before half. But that's why I was so not in love with the play sequence before the field goal. Because, man, there is nothing guaranteed with this kid's right foot right now. So you can't run the ball on 3rd down or 2nd down. Take some shots to your 6'11" kid. Take some shots and try to go score touchdowns. Because even in that moment, 21-10 isn't great, especially when Wake's getting the ball to start the second half. And there was a lot of pressure on that kick because the half had gone so bad. And Wake was on a 21-0 run. There was more pressure than normal in a 21-7 game in the second quarter. And I just didn't trust the kid to come through there. And he didn't. And so now I just think you go into the rest of this season not knowing what you have at kicker, not being able to trust any of it. And the bummer of it all is, as I tweeted about on Sunday, Florida State has the highest-ranked special teams unit in the country. Them and Clemson are tied for first in the country according to Pro Football Focus in special teams, just overall special teams play. They've been outstanding. They had a nice kick return in that game. The last one I think they had was a really good one. And then they had Micah had that great punt return. And those punt coverage units and kick coverage units are off the chain, as the kids say. The kids still say that, don't they, Aslan?
Bring it back to 99, man.
It's off the chain, gang. So they've been really well, and they've done really well in special teams, except for the kicker can't make kicks, and that's kind of a big deal about special teams. But
which again, how can you be number one and you don't have a kicker? Maybe we shouldn't put all of our eggs into the analytics basket sometimes, kids.
Correct, sure. There's other ways to judge special teams, I guess, than just how the kicker performs, but it is a pretty big part of the process. And
Clemson's got a really good kicker too. So.
They do. So just moving forward, it's going to be really interesting and fascinating to see what he does here because he's never going to throw a kid under the bus, and you wouldn't want your coach to just rip on a flipping 20-year-old kicker.
Brian Kelly Brian Kelly
but,
ripped on his punt returner. His punt returner's had a good season now, man. You threw him under the bus after that.
But it's not like Fitzgerald. Kicker is such a different deal, man.
Yeah.
I just there's no good that can come out of ripping them. And so he's never going to throw him under the bus publicly, but we all know Norvell's watching what we're watching, and now after that missed 29-yard field goal, everything changed. And it should have changed before that, quite honestly. It didn't. Now it has. And he threw the kid out for the 55-yard field goal just because it was basically like a here goes nothing.
Yeah.
And let's just see what happens here. Maybe he makes this kick, and it's huge for the rest of the season. But he missed it because he missed it. And now you're left with no real kicking option right now. And maybe I don't even know. I don't even know if Fitzgerald plays. I mean, maybe there's less pressure on the road. I don't know.
I think you still play your first possession I think you play every possession like you have a kicker, and then once you need him and he fails you, then you go back to we don't have a kicker. You cannot go into a conference game on the road saying we're just going to go for it on fourth down all the time.
So you think
you have to be a little
drive
bit
of the game, 4th and 8 at the 20. You're kicking it.
Yeah.
And now when he misses it, what do you do the next time it's 4th and 9 at the 25?
Yeah, and then you're going for it. I think.
Yeah.
I know people will be like, why did you even put him out there? You still, if he's kicking okay in practice, they're a weird bunch kickers. You have to just try. I mean, I know that's not the best logic, but you have to give them. You cannot play 60 full games of we can't kick the ball. We can't kick a field goal at all. I think you try the first time around when you were in a situation, if it's a 4th and 8 on the 24-yard line or something. You try to see if he can get a 41-yarder through, and if he does, you're like, all right, man, things are turning. And if not, all right, well, it's a 0-0 game, or we're down 7-0. Now we know this is the way we have to play the rest of the way. So
but do you do that every game, or if and when he misses the first kick against NC State? You can't keep doing it every game.
You do it until the bye week. The bye week, you figure it out. But I think the Clemson game's the same way. You have to play Clemson. Like, do you have a field goal kicker as well? And if he misses, if he goes 0 for 1 against NC State, 0 for 1 against Clemson, I don't know how you go into a bye week and come out of it, and he's still your kicker.
I don't think you could run him out. If he doesn't make a kick against NC State, I don't know that you can run him out against Clemson. Because at home,
right.
At home with a crowd that already booed him for the 29-yard field goal. And, I don't like that. Please don't boo college kids. But I also don't know if you're booing him or the decision. Right. Because I was like, you can't run him out here right here. I know it's 4th and 12. You can't run him out here and just take the points because there's no points to be taken. You don't know if he's going to make this. But so I don't think it's fair to him to have him kick in front of this home crowd if he does not have a good game against NC State. It's just too much pressure, and then the fans are going to turn on him, and it could get ugly. And I don't want that for the kid. Now, clearly, the don't be ugly to college kids. These aren't pro athletes. He's not trying to miss, but that's a reality of life in 2022. Don't subject your player to that if he hasn't earned it against NC State, because heaven forbid he goes out and in a 7-7 game in the second quarter against Clemson, he shanks a 36-yarder. The boos will rain down on that kid, and you just can't have that. So don't do that. But that said,
Corey, the father, speaking here like that's his own
I'm just
child
saying, you got to, you have a little. I mean, at some point, stop believing in him.
He's on scholarship. He can handle it.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, he's getting his books paid. I don't know that Ryan Fitzgerald has a big NIL deal. If he did, boo away, gang. If you're a member of Rising Spear and you know a lot of your money's going to Fitzgerald, sure, but that's not the reality of the situation. So yeah, that I just don't want it to turn ugly. I just don't want it to turn ugly, and I just don't. Kicker is such a fickle position, and it's such a mind screw that you don't want to break him. And he might already be where he can't be salvaged, but I don't think that's true. But having him kick at home against Clemson, if he misses a couple more kicks in Raleigh, he's going to be booed when he runs out onto the field. And you don't want that. It's just you don't want that to happen to your fan base, and that's part of being a head coach is protecting your players from stuff like that. So, but we'll cross that. He might kick the game winner against NC State, man, and he might be beloved.
Honestly, I think you send out the walk-on kicker first attempt against NC State. If he makes it, we ride with that guy.
Yeah.
If the walk-on misses it, then you do not kick a field goal until it's the fourth quarter and there's 4 seconds left and you're down by 2, and then you trot out Fitzgerald. If it's like obviously you're not gonna throw it in the end zone if you're 18 yards that way. Maybe you go for it if it's 4th and 3. If it's 4th and goal on the 3-yard line, maybe you go for it. I would hope not. But I think maybe that's the way you work it. And I'm being honest. Like, you let the walk-on go. Let him kind of be your canary in the coal mine. If he makes, like, all right, maybe we got something. And then if not, then you're gonna have Fitzgerald come in there on the last, and then you coach the rest of the game like we're not kicking field goals until you absolutely positively have to, and everybody can kind of be like, we can be practical in the situation, look at it, and say, okay.
Yeah, and that's kind of why the field goal situation is one of the reasons, one of the layers of why I thought that was horrible game management in the final 5 minutes on Saturday. Once Wake Forest got that 1st and goal at the 7, you have to let them score a touchdown. It's 28-21. They are inside your 6-yard line, 5-yard line, I think. So you're talking about at most a 22 or 23-yard field goal. That kid is not going to miss that. He's a good kicker. Now, you could get lucky, I guess, and think you're going to block it. But your best chance of winning is letting them score right then. And you have, I don't know, 4 minutes on the clock, 4.5 minutes on the clock, and all 3 timeouts. And you know they're going to be in a prevent. So you are going to be able to get at least to their 20. And then if you throw it up to Big Boy and he catches a pass, you catch the ball, you score. Maybe there's 2 minutes left. There's 2:10 left. You have all 3 timeouts. And it's 35-28 or 27. I don't know what you're doing after the touchdown. 29 maybe. Maybe you go for 2 right there. But you probably actually should go for 2 right there to make it 35-29. You can still try to onside kick it. If you don't get it, you have 3 timeouts to get the ball back. As it was, the way Mike Norvell played out that last 4 minutes, the only way you could win the game is to recover an onside kick. It's the only way. And the odds of that aren't very high. If you let them score on the first play, on that 1st and goal from the 6 or the 4, whatever it was, if you let them score,
the 4, yeah,
you get the ball back with 4 minutes left with 3 timeouts. You can go down the field, get the ball back, go down the field again. Kind of like LSU did. Remember that game, gang? It happens. You can do that. That is possible. The chances of you down 10, because once you're down 10 or 14, it doesn't matter. It's still 2 scores. And plus, you're implying that you want this game to come down to a field goal attempt, which you clearly don't. So why do that anyway? Like, okay, you held them to a field goal. You're only down 10. Now a touchdown and field goal ties it. Oh, wait, we can't kick field goals. So that part of it just didn't make any sense from a strategic standpoint. And it was nice that they held him out of the end zone. I also don't think Wake was really trying to score. I think they wanted to run some clock and make Mike Norvell use timeouts, which he did, and it didn't end up mattering because you missed the field goal anyway. But even if he makes the field goal, Aslan, how much time's left? 50 seconds? With no timeouts. And you have to go recover an onside kick.
Minute 13.
Theoretically, you let them score right when they get 1st and goal. You get the ball back with 3:50 with a good passing offense.
Probably like 3.5 because they're
with 3 timeouts though.
Yeah.
You can go down the field, and it really doesn't matter when you score if you keep all your timeouts.
Yeah.
You score with 1:08 left. Even if they recover the onside kick, they're going to run it 3 times. You stop them. I mean, look, it's still going to be a miracle, but you get the ball back with 50 seconds left, 45 seconds left. Down by a touchdown. You have a chance. But the way he played that out was we have to recover an onside kick to win this game. And that just doesn't make sense to me. I guess his counter would be, or they could miss the kick. They could miss the kick. We could block it.
Yeah.
We've done that before.
They have.
But that did not happen, and you lost the game.
All right. On the way out, we have covered everything about it. Check out Ira Schofiel's 3-2-1, where he makes his 3 observations, 2 questions we're asking ourselves, and then a prediction moving forward. And one of the observations he made about it, he talked about on the top of the Warchant wrap with you, Corey, was that he just felt like maybe, prime time was a little bit too much for this team. The 4-0 start. This is the first time that this team has been ranked. These expectations are real. They're ranked. The team they're playing is ranked. He says, this might be the sign of a team like in the adolescent stages of growing and becoming a winner, maybe being a little immature at this juncture. I don't know much I like Ira's take on this. I like looking at a more esoteric sort of viewpoint, but I don't know, man. Was this team not ready for prime time, or is this? I mean, they played a team that's pretty good, and they couldn't block and they couldn't get off the field. Again, me oversimplifying things. Is there anything to maybe the moment being too big for a team that's still in the midst of the climb, if you will?
I think it's more about, I think there's some validity to that. I think it's more about when things started going poorly. is when they kind of, and Norvell even said it, they just started pressing. They didn't seem like the same team on the sidelines they had been for the first 4 weeks. Because when you're 4-0 and you're ranked and you're thinking this might be a magical special season and all of a sudden you're down 14, 21-7, your hotshot quarterback fumbles the ball, they're going down the field and scoring, I think you start to press and feel the pressure of things and expectations, and maybe they weren't ready for that. But I don't know, man. It's again, there's not much difference between number 12 in the country and number 50 in the country. And I just think they didn't play well. They played a team that's probably better than them, probably not more talented necessarily, but a better team. That's a good team. That's the 15th ranked team in the country. Now after that win, and their only loss was to Clemson in overtime, double overtime. That's a good team. If they would have lost to Boston College, I think it would have been really a sign of immaturity. I just think they lost to a well-coached, good team. I don't think Florida State played well, but I don't know if it's because they were overwhelmed by the moment or the stage as much as it was when you're not great, there are ups and downs. It's just the nature of college football in 2022. This happened to be a valley and not a peak, and they had some moments where they rose up and got close to getting back into the game or maybe even tying the game or winning the game, but it didn't happen. But next week it might. And I don't think next week it would mean that they rose to the moment, or they are not that they felt like they belonged on the stage as much as they played well. And when you're not great, you're going to have moments where you don't play great, and another team takes advantage and wins. I think they're a top 25-ish team. And what do top 25-ish teams do, Aslan?
Lose 3 or 4 games in a season.
Yep, exactly. And I think that's what we have with this team. But I also think they're going to rise up and maybe win a game. Maybe you're right now, after that loss to Wake Forest, you're not expecting them to win. And that could be, look, man, it's not an easy schedule.
Well, the stretch, though, this 3-game stretch, if you had to win any of them, you probably would have put Wake Forest at the bottom of your list. Winning Raleigh against NC State or beating Clemson.
You mean as far as importance?
Yeah.
Yeah, but also I think winning at home against Wake was probably the one you would view as the easiest of the 3.
That's fine, though.
And you lost that one. So what does that mean for the next 2? I honestly don't think it means much. Yeah. I just think, look, they're going to have to play really well to beat Clemson, right? Yes. They just have to. Clemson, apparently that kid can play quarterback now. Great. Awesome. Their defense is good. NC State has a very good defense, and you know that quarterback can make some plays. So that's you just have to play well to win those games. I don't think they played well against Wake, and that's why they lost. Now, it could be for those kind of reasons. And look, it's not normal for Norvell to come into a press conference and say they were pressing. Well, why is that? They don't press. That's not a team that usually gets down and gets flustered when they get behind. But they did. So maybe that was part of, the top 25 matchup, the show, the nerves, the stage. But I just don't think it means they can't win either one of these next 2 games. Would I be surprised if they won both of them? Absolutely. I'm not expecting that. But would I be stunned if they won one of the 2? No. Both of these teams are eminently beatable. Aslan just told you guys, Florida State's a 3.5-point underdog. That ain't much. That's basically a pick'em. That means if this game was played at a neutral site, Florida State might be favored, or it would be a pick'em game. These teams are evenly matched. Clemson is more talented than Florida State, but Clemson has to come to Doak. That game is winnable as well. So that's just it's just a bummer you lost to flipping Dave Clawson. That's the biggest takeaway. You lost to that dude. After you fed his team. You fed his team, Aslan. They got food, and then they still beat you.
All right, it's bath time for Corey. He likes to get a nice soak in before heading to the press conference on Monday to talk to the coaches. We'll be out there.
Why are you saying that? Do you hear the faucet running?
Oh yeah. No,
it's not the faucet. It's the Stephanie's cooking. She's boiling some stuff.
I know, but that doesn't make sense.
This microphone is way too strong.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense when people are listening to it at 6 in the morning. I was trying to give you a little bit of cover there.
Yes, that's my morning bath routine. Yeah. Absolutely.
Also, shout out to Corey saying that I just told you that Florida State was a 3-point underdog against NC State, which is something I said probably about 40 minutes ago, which now I feel really bad for Brady because he probably gets yelled at for, I just told you. And it's like, Dad, you told me that 2 days ago.
Right. Long show. Sorry, gang.
How it goes. Stay connected to warchant.com. We'll have full coverage on the press conference over on the website around noonish or so. So tune in. For Corey, I'm Aslan. Thank you for listening to Wake Up Warchant, presented by the Corner Pocket Bar and Grill, Tallahassee, Florida.